One of the major questions that we have is around infectious disease dynamics and the impact of different control strategies. And I think that's really an area we're still pushing forward on. And for instance, we're looking at the impact of new vaccination strategies that target children around influenza. And that's been a major research goal of ours, is to understand the population impact of, say, vaccinating children against influenza, and whether that leads to a population level shift in the amount of mortality and morbidity we see in flu, for instance, in the elderly population. Because if you vaccinate the younger children, you're potentially reducing the vectors of transmission in the population. And so we have a grant from the NIH to really study this association, and there's been recent recommendations, for instance, for all children to get flu vaccine in the coming flu season. So we're going to be actively tracking that to see whether, in fact, we're seeing a population-wide reduction in influenza by targeting these children. And I think that's a fairly exciting topic, because we're really thinking about the population-level impact of a public health strategy. And I think that sort of gets to sort of the overall goal of our research, is really looking at population-level effects of different strategies, whether it's vaccination or quarantine or reducing travel patterns, social distancing. So we're looking at all these different types of measures in, say, an epidemic flu or a pandemic or the next SARS, for instance, to really understand what the appropriate control strategies need to be.
One area that I'm just actually have two grants to begin to study now is sort of biosurveillance in reverse. How can we take those data and actually inform clinical decisions with them? So, for example, if you're trying to decide whether a child has pertussis, it would be extremely helpful to know whether there's a pertussis outbreak in your area at that time. None of the clinical decision rules or approaches to medical decision making in any kind of quantitative way incorporate information about what's going on at the population level in your region at the time. So this is something that I call contextualized medicine, the ability to make a decision about your patient in the context of what's going on at the population level. So it's kind of biosurveillance in reverse, because we're now bouncing the data back off the public health scale and bringing it back to the individual clinical scale.